Winning cures everything. Now for your hosts, Gary and Chris.
Welcome in, Winning Cures Everything. It is the Friday, February 25th edition of the show. I'm Gary.
I'm Chris.
And that's right, we got Chris back on the phone. I did a little solo thing on Tuesday, but I'm so glad to have Chris back so that I'm not just rambling for 40-something minutes here. But it may be the off-season, my friend, but there's still a ton of things to discuss. So before we do any reads or anything like that, let's go on and dive into, I think, one of the biggest topics going on right now. We'll start in the NFL, and that is the broadcast booths are going to look vastly different next year. Troy Aikman, it appears, is set to be the ESPN Monday Night Football guy, and the number that was reported, Chris, was $17.5 million a year, which is basically Tony Romo numbers. I mean, this is kind of insane. There was talk that he was, or not talk, it was reported that he was in contract negotiations with Amazon. It looks like Al Michaels is going to be the Amazon Thursday Night Football guy. He's going to move over from NBC. And now the Fox Sports lead broadcast crew guy, the play-by-play, or not play-by-play, the color analyst, Troy Aikman, is going to be the color analyst for ESPN's Monday Night Football booth. And now there's talk that Steve Levy will not be the guy to handle play-by-play for ESPN. It could possibly be Joe Buck. They could end up buying him out of his last year of his contract with Fox. Give me your thoughts here. Is this does this change anything for you? Is it surprising? Is it?
Well, it would be the best Monday night booth we've had in a long, long time since Al Michaels was in it. Since I like the days of Tirico and Kornheiser. Most people did not. So I understand it. I mean it's a big booth. Getting Buck is a big deal because you're not. Here's the thing, he's not just a football guy. This guy also does the World Series, and he has done for a long time, and Fox owns the World Series. Now you're about to lose Joe Buck as the voice of the World Series, which will make a lot of baseball fans happy because baseball fans like to bitch about things. But I actually think Joe Buck does a pretty good job of calling the game and being pretty down the middle.
I agree with you. I agree with you a whole lot. It will change a lot of things just across the board. This is, to me, just a little bit surprising, sticking on the Troy Aikman thing. If they do not get Joe Buck, I don't know what Troy Aikman would be like without without Joe Buck, because I don't know that I remember him being with anybody else. Do you remember the last time he was with anybody, like other than Joe?
No, I don't know who he was with before Joe, or was he ever? I couldn't tell you. I don't remember that long ago. And I'll say this: it wasn't, but for several years ago that I started actually paying attention to this. I mean, it's only been like the last 5 years that I actually care who was calling the game, outside of the fact that John Gruden ruined every Monday Night Football game for me for almost a decade. That was it. Because I guess before the red zone became such a big deal for me, I just kind of flipped channels on Sundays, and you always had like 7-8 games going at one time. And so I was, I guess I never paid a lot of attention to who was calling those games. I knew Al Michaels' voice because he was Sunday Night Football. I knew the people who did Monday Night Football because they were the only games on. Joe and Troy have been doing Thursday Night Football for a long time because it's the only game on. You know who they are, and that's when I paid real close attention to who's actually calling the game. Even watching the red zone, you get the same, they're flipping the channel for you and you're hearing different people call the game or,
Did we lose Chris?
Some people for Comcast. I don't know who those people are because I don't have that. But, gotcha. You're hearing so many different voices for the most part. We know who Romo is. We know who Troy and Buck are. That's kind of the list of the guys that I know that do games all the time. Like, I know all these other guys. Like, I know who Ian Eagle is. But I don't care if they're calling the game or not. Like, it doesn't move the needle one way or another. I'm going to watch the game based on the game.
Yeah, with Tony Romo, I mean, obviously Jim Nantz, but Nantz also handles the Masters. He handles the NCAA Final Four. I mean, just all like his voice is synonymous with a ton of different things. But Tony Romo has certainly established his name as being a vital one on Sundays. Troy Aikman and Joe Buck together are certainly a big group. You dig into some of these other things. How would it impact the rest of the NFL broadcasting landscape? Richard Deitch, said he thinks that Fox, if they end up keeping Joe Buck, is going to go get Greg Olson, who is the network's number 2 NFL analyst. They'll keep him and just move him up to the main booth. But it's, Sean Payton is out there now. Like, there's a possibility they could bring Sean Payton in. I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, it's certainly strange. It does look like Sean McVay, by the way, is going to stay and coach the Rams at least for one more season. We shall see. But, now that Amazon is in, you've got a ton of different networks that are trying to hire the right broadcast booth. And we've seen with Monday Night Football, it is important to get the right voices in there because, as you said with Gruden, like, it ruined it for you for a long time. And I would dare to say it's been worse, even after Gruden.
It has. As much as I hated Gruden, it has been worse. Jason Witten was an absolute catastrophe, just a complete and utter disaster. Everyone hated Booger. I actually liked Booger, but they hated Booger because Booger said just the things that everyone already saw, like the obvious. That's fine. I would rather have somebody pointing out everything, even the obvious, to me, than a guy like Gruden who never had a negative thing to say about anybody. You have a team with 37 penalties on a Monday night game, and nobody made a mistake, and everybody played great because he knew one day he wanted to go back to coaching, and he didn't want any film of him trashing a player that he might have to coach. And that always rubbed me the wrong way. That tells me you were being fake. It's not that I hated Gruden, okay? It's that he didn't say anything. But you're supposed to be on the game teaching me something. The whole reason they hire a coach and not a comedian is because you're supposed to have knowledge that I don't have.
True.
Right? If you're not going to teach me something new, then I just put somebody up there who's going to be funny. Okay? Because that person's going to know how to tell a story, know how to keep an audience, and know how to entertain. Because you're not doing any of those things, and you're just ball washing all these people that you hope to work with again at another point in time.
True, very true. As far as
Troy, on the other hand, man, Troy has gotten.
Oh yeah,
Troy used to be a whole lot like that. The older he's gotten, and the farther away from the game he's gotten, he's not close to any of these players. He doesn't have a relationship with any of these players anymore.
And he's just honest.
He has no problem being honest. That's all I want from those guys. I'm not saying you have to just go out there and cut everybody to pieces. But when somebody deserves to be cut to pieces, I need to know you're going to be honest and tell me what you're thinking.
Yes, I agree. As far as who might pair with Aikman if Joe Buck does not come over, there's a possibility that we could be looking at Chris Fowler moving from the college football booth over to the Monday Night Football booth. So that's something else to pay attention to as we go along. Let's dive off of that. Let's talk about college football playoff expansion. Now, I talked about it a little bit on Tuesday's show, but Chris, you have not had a chance to really weigh in on this since they announced that it will be delayed through the 2026 season. Look, there was an article in the LA Times, and the headline on this article says, let me scroll back up. It says, commentary, Pac-12 took heat for delaying playoff expansion, but SEC came out biggest loser. Now, basically, they're saying it's a win for the Pac-12. It's a loss for the SEC. The Pac-12 has not had a playoff participant since the 2016 season. With the way,
all right, I got a question. I'm going to stop.
Okay.
And maybe you were about to answer this, and I just interrupted. If that's the case, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I didn't read this article. I saw the headline, and I know what they're saying. My question is this: is this one of those things where they're just calling one guy a winner and one guy a loser, or do they actually give logic and reasoning and understanding as to how they got those names that they're calling somebody?
They actually give good reasons behind it, and it's
okay.
So I shared out a tweet not too long ago. I think it was the day that it was announced, and everybody had come out and written these scathing articles about how there's no leadership and you're not giving the fans what they want, et cetera, and how basically these conference commissioners were letting everybody down. And I just questioned it. I said, are they really letting everybody down by delaying it for 2 more years? But what this article explains is exactly my point in this, and that is, by delaying this for 2 more years, you take it to the open market, like you and I have talked about ad nauseum on this show multiple times. If you go ahead and expand in the next 2 seasons, then you end up with ESPN getting the exclusive negotiating rights, and they hold on to the playoff even longer. If you take it to the open market, you can get multiple networks. You can work out a whole lot of other things. And part of the reason why Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, wants this thing delayed is he wants some other things handled in the meantime. And they talk about player safety and whatnot. And we can sit here and very nonchalantly say they don't give a rip about player safety. But there are ways that you can get less snaps in a game. The NFL does it. The average NFL team averages 68 plays a game. The average college football team.
The average NFL game is 2.5 to 3 hours. The average college game is 4 to 4.5 hours.
Exactly. Well, here's the difference: is teams average running 10 more plays in college than they do in the NFL, because the never-ending clock, right? The clock just runs unless you go out of bounds or et cetera, et cetera. Last 2 minutes.
Like yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to stop the clock, but for the most part, the clock runs, and you get less drives, you get less plays, et cetera. If college football were to implement something along those lines, then you can get more plays taken out of a season, and then maybe the extra game doesn't hurt as much, right? Maybe it's not as crazy. There are ways to do it.
Because at the end of the day, hang on, it won't hurt at all because there's only 2 teams that are going to actually play one more game, right? Yeah. Only the 2 champions, and you're going to lose way more snaps over the course of a year than a full game's worth. You play 12 football games, forget any bowl games, forget any of that. You play 12 games where the clock is continuously running, you're easily losing a full game of snaps. I would bet the math shows that.
Yes. I agree.
If you're talking about 10 to 12 snaps a game in the NFL, take 10 to 12, multiply it by, 12 games. And you're at 10 and 12, you're at 120 right there. You don't run 120 snaps for the most part in a game. You're losing a full game's worth. So I'm done with the argument of player safety. Here's my problem with this, okay? Here's my complete other problem, and I'm so curious how this makes the SEC losers, which I'm okay if you call the SEC losers. I'm not a a tout for the SEC. It's my conference, but, they screw stuff up too. Here's the deal. Why can't we do multiple things at one time? These people are so bad at problem solving. They just feel like we can only address one problem at a time. Why can't we make those changes when we institute the new playoff and say, if we do this, we have to buy out of the ESPN contract for the last 2 years, and we have to, if we're going to expand now, we want to, what is it going to cost us, ESPN, to break the contract right now? You're going to be a major part, you're going to be a major contributor, and your ratings are going to go up. But you're not going to own all of it. So what is it going to cost us to break the contract right now?
And that's
these
that's
are
the
things
issue,
that
right?
They're not even talking about negotiating or trying to do. Let's just let the clock run out. Oh, let's just sit on our ass and wait. And while you're doing that, you've got 2 classrooms of kids going through years, 2 seasons worth of kids going through years that are going to leave for the NFL or for graduation and miss out on a great opportunity that they could be afforded to if you would just stop being a bitch.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
Solve. I'm not saying the other way is the wrong way or the right way. I'm saying learn how to problem solve. Fix more than one thing at one time.
And that's the deal here. The reason why they're saying the SEC is the loser is because the SEC assumed that bringing in Oklahoma and Texas, that they were going to have a 12-team playoff about the time that those 2 came into the league, and that, we'll be able to fill out this playoff with SEC teams for the most part. That's where they were going at with this, and along with that, the money, et cetera, right?
But hang on now.
Okay.
The SEC already made the concession that they were cool with like only 3 teams getting in or putting a cap on it to where, one conference can't have all of the teams. Right?
Oh yeah.
So how does that stop them from anything? You think that because we don't get Oklahoma and Texas in time that we still wouldn't get 3 teams in?
That's
like we're regularly getting 2 teams in a 4-team playoff. You
I
dumb
agree.
bastards. Like this is people that just say stuff, but they don't think about how ignorant what they're saying sounds.
So here's the thing. I don't know that it necessarily makes the SEC a loser because the SEC has been winning the entire playoff era. They're the only conference that hadn't missed one.
Gary, you're pussyfooting around this thing. It doesn't. I don't know if it necessarily makes them. It doesn't make them a loser in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Agreed.
There's no way to spin this where the SEC is losing. That's what I was trying to figure out. How do they think we lost in this?
Well, I think what they're saying is the SEC wanted something and they didn't get it. And the Pac-12 was a part of that, right? I think that's the biggest thing, which is ridiculous.
But here's the thing that they don't understand and what they don't realize is, so let's say you just held this thing up, and for valid reasons. I think you absolutely need to, I want to run the clock, okay? Mainly because I ain't got 4.5 hours to watch the damn football game. All right.
Yeah.
Like, let's get shit done faster. Everybody else is condensing things. Movies are now 90 minutes. They used to be 2 hours long. Like, everybody in the world understands this, but college football. So run the damn clock. It'll make the game safer. It'll actually make the game more entertaining and better. Your other step is we have to break away from the ESPN owns all of it. You have to do that. So stick to those guns, but make some concessions and let's get this thing done now. Because here's the deal. If you think you got one over on the SEC and you just put a thumb in the eye of the SEC, what happens when the next round of negotiation comes up? All right. And the SEC says, we've got 16 teams. We'll just do our own tournament. Dan Wetzel threw this idea out there.
I threw it out on Tuesday.
Dan Wetzel's the smartest college football writer in the country. It's not close, by the way. He has ideas that can solve most all of these problems that are well thought out. He's not bought off or paid off by anybody. And these are just ideas that are better for the sport. And what if the SEC just says, fine, we're going to do our own tournament. Maybe we'll invite the Big 12 in since you didn't let them be part of the alliance. We know we stole their 2 biggest things. But now if we attach ourselves to the hip with them, that, maybe we can rekindle that relationship. We can kind of be forgiven. And maybe one of these G5 conferences steps up, plays a little bit better ball game. We'll invite them in, whatever. And we just have our own tournament. We'll do a 12-team tournament that the country wants to see. ESPN will own it all. And then you guys can have your own little piddly conference tournament. Let's see who actually shows up. Now, it's not the problem of where the eyeballs go. It's not the problem of what makes the best tournament or the playoff. What happens when all the greatest athletes in the country say that SEC went on ESPN, that's a much bigger deal. And we're just going to go play there. Now Ohio State is starting to – they've always been the one team that could compete with the SEC that's outside of the South. Now they start losing kids. Now all of a sudden USC starts losing kids. All the best athletes in the world are already coming to SEC schools over those schools for the most part. But Ohio State and USC have always kind of been on parallel. What happens when that parallel just starts moving tremendously?
I agree with you. I agree. It is interesting. And now I will say this. We are only 4 years away from the end of that contract. We're about 24 months away from the beginning of the next round of negotiations, right? So they need to have some kind of a plan in place. But I will say this. This one needed to be unanimous. The next one does not. And I don't know what the exact number is, but this vote that just went through 8-3, that would pass in the next round once you get ready for the next commitment that you have to make. So we'll see what ends up happening and if they decide to do that. But if the SEC decides, we might just stick with 4, or we're going to make up our own playoff, and we're not worried about expanding past that.
Because none of it hurts them. None of it hurts the SEC.
No, you have 100% got that right. It is. It's going to be interesting. Going to be interesting to see what happens there. Let's let me do podcast reads right quick. WinningCuresEverything.com is the website. Go and check it out. Everything you need to know about us is over there. Of course, if you have not already, please subscribe to the podcast version of the show. That way you never miss an episode. Hit subscribe. It's going to go ahead and download into your podcast feed, and that certainly helps us out. Along with that, the YouTube numbers continue to grow. We certainly appreciate you guys for doing that. If you're watching right now, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. It's going to let you know when we go live. Jump into the chat. We love to see what you guys are talking about. We like all the comments, etc. You can always reach out to us on Twitter, of course. If you see it on the screen, there you go. Very easy. But Chris is at Chris B. Giannini. I am at Gary WCE, and the show is at Winning Cures. Now, the show is brought to you by BetUS, and that is America's premier online sports book. It is where the game begins. Head over to your browser, click in BetUS.com. Make sure that you get signed up. Tons of great deals and whatnot heading into March Madness, heading into the NBA playoffs, etc. And, of course, we got golf going on. We got UFC, everything else. Tons of great stuff to be gambling on right now. Also, check out BetUS TV, BetUSTV.com. I host a ton of shows over there, how-to videos on sports gambling, etc., etc. So go ahead and check that out. Now, Chris, let's dive into the college football attendance numbers have dropped to the lowest since 1981. Now, the normal people would say, you know what, it was the year after COVID. There was still some COVID fright and whatnot going into this season. So, yeah, there were going to be people that stayed at home, etc. But when you look at the numbers, this is a continuing trend. It has declined every year since 2014. I mean, this is seven straight seasons. So they're down to 39,848 per game attendance. And, 2014 was the last year that it went up, and it was 44,603. I'm curious if you think that there's anything more to this other than, everybody's got big TVs and, COVID was this year, et cetera, et cetera. I can go through the individual numbers. The only conferences that actually went up this year were the MAC, which had the highest since 2006, the Sun Belt, which had the highest since 2013, and the Big Ten, which had the highest since 2018. Everything else went down, including the ACC, which was down 11.7% from 2019. They didn't record stats in 2020, obviously. But for the ACC, it's the lowest since 1990. Like, do you think that there's anything else that could be going on here?
No, it's 100% product on the field. Florida State used to sell out that stadium year in and year out. Now they couldn't get 20,000 if you paid them to go into it. Okay? Clemson, this is the part of having a big-time team have a down year. LSU didn't do very well in attendance this year. Why? Because they blew balls. Clemson wasn't very good, wasn't very entertaining, struggled to win a lot of games, ugly. Fans aren't coming out. The rest of the ACC is putrid. Wake Forest and Pitt were your two best teams, not massive fan bases that are selling out stadiums when they're good. So, yeah, that's it. I think it's 100% product on the field because the teams that are really good still sell out every game. And the teams that actually care about this, what I do think it means is a lot of those middling teams, like you talked about the MAC, but like there's a lot of other schools and a lot of other, like, I don't know how you take into effect the fact that Tulane lost 2 home games. So that's like 30-something thousand people, 40-something thousand people times 2 that got taken away from the attendance. Like, so I don't know what goes into these things to make a number. But if you're talking about all 130, schools, this doesn't concern me. If your team is putting a good product on the field, people are coming out to watch them week in and week out. This is not an economy thing. This is not a COVID thing. This is the product on the field for a lot of these schools was bad, and people just aren't going to go watch bad products.
Yes. You add that along with the COVID situation. And, yeah, I mean, we did see Arkansas jumped up over 14,000 people because they had a good year.
Yep.
Because
they went from being shitty to being amazing.
Yes, if you win.
Comparative to what their expectations were.
If you win, you're going to have a good year. Yeah.
So you can't just say, oh, it's this or oh, it's that. No. It's all about the product that you're putting on the field. All right? The Coliseum is rocking when USC is rocking. Okay? When UCLA is rolling, that stadium is great. But they haven't been rolling in over a decade. And so it's dying. If they ever came back to life, people would show up in droves.
I think you're right. The Pac-12, by the way, their lowest attendance ever this season. They averaged 43,000.
Yeah, but that's not their fault. I'm not going to blame the Pac-12 fans for this. We shit on the Pac-12 a lot. This isn't their fault. Their schools the majority of them were in California, and California was absolutely last year still locked down in a massive, tyrannical way. Like just the whole rest of the country was open with no major issues at all. And California just said, we're not doing it. We're not budging. We don't care. Football's not that important. And that's the people that are in charge, not the fans.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'll move on. Let's check this topic out. Art Briles, we talked about it on last week's show, and this week it is official. As of now, Art Briles is the offensive coordinator for Grambling State University. And, this is what I find interesting about this, and we don't have to, go into whether or not we think it was a good idea, because we both agreed last week that it is a good hire if they got it done. But when it comes down to it, what I have been most surprised about is the amount of media that are not even willing to give this thing a second look, not willing to even give any thought to it, and just immediately bash anybody that thinks that it's a good idea. I was shocked at all of the people online, mostly in Twitter and message boards and whatnot, that are so against this and not willing to look at what the facts of this case were. What's your opinion on this?
The problem is none of them ever paid attention to a single fact of the case. They watched news media and they listened to the hype of ESPN, crushed Baylor, and Baylor had a cesspool of a situation going on that was campus wide. I've been through this case multiple times on this show. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. Art Briles is not completely blameless, but he at no possible way could he be the scapegoat of this. It's just not possible.
And yet he was made the scapegoat by Baylor, and they paid him. They paid him out to be that.
But it wasn't just he was made the scapegoat by Baylor. He was also blacklisted. The president, the chancellor, everybody else involved didn't get blacklisted. They all got to move on from Baylor, and they all got other jobs. They all got second chances at life. Art is the only one that, for some reason, everybody just drew a line in the sand and said, he was the head coach, can't happen, he'll never work again. And I just think that's insane because you didn't read any of the cases. You didn't look into any of the things that actually happened. You're just headline warriors, and shame on you. Shame on all of you for wanting a man's life to be completely ruined because you're too lazy to read facts.
I tend to agree with you. Did you see the pictures of him, by the way?
No, I haven't seen a picture of him since he grew out. He dyed his hair blonde when he was coaching high school and had the blonde mullet.
Well, that's what he's got going on right now. He's got
still got the blonde mullet. That was, 2 years ago?
Yes.
That's a ballsy move for a 60-year-old man. I'm just going to tell you. The nuts on a guy like that, boy, I'm not saying I wouldn't want him to coach for me just for that factor alone. You got to be a ballsy bitch to have a haircut like that as a 60-something-year-old man.
He looks like just a straight villain right now. He's got a villain, like a evil, whatever. It is crazy
baby.
To look at.
Wear it.
do your thing. But I do think that Grambling State will be a better football team having him on the sideline as their offensive coordinator. So
I also think this is the road to redemption. I do. I do believe that at some point in time he's going to do really good things there, and then somebody has to talk about it. You can't ignore it once he starts doing good things, and then somebody in one of these other conferences will give him a shot at even an OC job. And that's what, I'm not asking to be the head coach. Listen, if he can't be trusted to make those kinds of decisions at the top head level, then he needs to go work for somebody else. That's fine. But to keep him away from major college football when he's the most qualified person out there is just beyond me. You can't do that. He should be able to be one of these big-time OCs, and nobody should say boo about it. Just stay the hell away from Tuscaloosa, and I'll be fine. Of course, that blonde-haired bullet would fit right in with all the trash in Tuscaloosa. Other than that,
you're ridiculous. You're good. Yeah. All right, let's talk about Marshall right quick. We've had several people contact the show and want to know what our thoughts are on the situation around Conference USA and the Sun Belt. So Marshall has sued Conference USA in its latest attempt to leave the conference by July 1st of this season, or of this year, and basically they got to stay, basically saying that they are allowed to leave. Now, Conference USA can go back at them again after March 7th, I believe, so I don't know what good the stay really does. Conference USA has put Marshall, Southern Miss, and I am forgetting somebody right now, and I should have written it down. But there are three teams that were trying to leave that decided, we're going to go on and leave for this season, and they let them know, and they found some kind of a loophole that says that they don't have to necessarily pay anything, or they can pay a little something and go ahead and leave. And Marshall has said, basically, you know what, we're going to sue you guys, and now Conference USA has come back and sued Marshall. When you pull up, let's see, on my Twitter page, I actually shared it out. Conference USA's statement said, while Conference USA respects the court's decision to temporarily grant the recent motion filed by Marshall University, the Conference USA Board of Directors stand firm in their belief that all Conference USA institutions, including Marshall, are expected to honor their contractual obligations and adhere to the agreed-upon bylaws and covenants. Conference USA is fully prepared to move forward with the remainder of the legal process. Okay, so in normal circumstances, the conference that is being left understands that there is nothing to be gained from this. Just go on and let them go and then collect your payout. But in this situation, I don't know that it's that easy. I think that they are going to force these three schools to stay in Conference USA for this season unless they pay some massive buyout. Like, I think that's the way that this thing is going to go down, but I really have no idea, Chris. Do you have any idea what to make of this entire situation? Because I don't remember seeing anything like this.
No, and I'd love to see the language where they, whatever the loophole is, where they get to leave without a buyout. Because I've never in my life seen one of these conference deals drawn up where you can leave in the middle of a deal without a buyout. I'm talking never in the history of college sports and realignment have we ever seen this. And I need to know the loophole that they're trying to use for the buyout to see, is this legit or is this just bullshit? Because that's the only thing that makes any sense at all to me. If you're Conference USA and they're trying to leave without paying, then yeah, I kind of want to force them to stay until they agree to pay. Because once you let them leave without paying, fighting them for that money is always harder to do.
Yeah.
Like once they're gone, it's just a lot harder to get the money than to if you can get a court to force them to basically stay until they pay the money. Or
the
you
third
get a
team
court to judge on you getting the money, yes or no, before they leave.
Yeah. No, the third team, by the way, was Old Dominion. All three,
that's it.
They all declared their intent to leave this summer. And they stated that Conference USA refused to negotiate an exit earlier than the 14 months required by the league's bylaws. So that's kind of their loophole here, is Conference USA refused to negotiate an exit for them, like within the 14 months. So,
well, did they refuse to negotiate, or did they refuse to negotiate off the number that they were wanting? So let's say it's $10 million for the league. I'm just pulling the number out of my ass. Okay. And they're like, well, we don't want to pay that. And they're like, well, we're not budgeting. And they're like, well,
like that's the negotiation.
They won't negotiate with us. Like, well, wait a minute now. You're trying to negotiate around a contract. We have contracts.
Yeah.
I don't have to negotiate. I have a contract.
Now, CUSA did respond to it, by the way. They responded to the statement. They demanded that this go to arbitration, in which a third-party arbitrator makes a ruling and could provide immediate injunctive relief, such as requiring Marshall to remain in the league. Outside lawyers.
Well, I'm going to tell you this.
Yeah.
That's probably in the contract as well. because almost every employment contract, I'm sure this is very different than an employment contract, but almost every employment contract says you cannot just sue your employer without going through arbitration. You have to go through arbitration. You cannot just sue them.
It makes sense.
And so I'm certain that language is in the contract as well. It looks like the schools are trying to break the contract and not follow the rules of it, which I think is a really dumb thing for them. You're about to leave for a much better thing. Making this fight to cripple or crush the people beneath you that you're leaving is just a shitty move. It's just a shitty move.
It is. It absolutely is. Tuesday, by
now,
the
if you're
way,
trying to get out cheaper, that's different. But then let's talk about money. Let's negotiate dollars and cents. But if you know that, the contract says you got to go through arbitration, then go through the damn arbitration. It isn't that hard.
Tuesday was the deadline for Marshall to provide available dates for an arbitration hearing to the American Arbitration Association. But, they didn't do it. So,
that's on them. Like, this is my problem is I'm on your side. I want you to leave and be able to do whatever's best for your school. I'm okay with that. But you're under a contract and you have to abide by the rules of the contract. This isn't the damn NBA. All right? You can't just sit out and say I'm hurt. You got to pay me the whole contract. It's never working for you again. The second you get traded away, I'm healed magically. Jalapeno, let's go. This isn't how this shit's going to work. This is the professional corporate world, man.
Yes.
You're
absolutely.
about to walk into a judge's, chambers. You can't just do this Mickey Mouse bullshit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I
was under assumption that they thought that there was some type of loophole in the language of the contract that would allow them to leave without paying. And I was how in the hell? Whoever wrote that, and I think I said that on the show. Whoever wrote that, if they allowed for a loophole like that, that person, whatever employment they're in now, if they're a bus driver today, they need to be fired from that job. They cannot be trusted to do any job well ever again.
So the only loophole would be the 14-month negotiation table. And if they just set a price, and if they set a price and didn't want to negotiate it, that in and of itself is a negotiation.
Well, I set a price. We're not going to negotiate. And I'm sure the price is in the contract, by the way. It's just like in the SEC. If you wanted to leave the SEC, this is what it costs you. The Big 12 is dealing with this right now. There's a cost for Oklahoma and Texas to leave. It's going to cost them something. And it's nobody gets to make this number up the way they want to. It's in the contract. It's contractually already negotiated for how you're going to leave if you leave. And so trying to do anything outside of that is going to be really hard on you. And if you're expecting to just do it without going at least through arbitration, then damn, what do you want?
Yeah, I agree. I think that they are going to be stuck in Conference USA next year. That's what I think is going to happen.
I wonder if they would have just gone through arbitration. Are they afraid that arbitration is not going to side with them because they don't have an actual argument to make? Because if you're trying to leave and you don't have any argument to make, then, I don't know what to tell you.
That makes sense, right? I mean, that's the way that this looks to me. But we'll see.
It's just a weird situation. I think Marshall and these schools are making a really bad situation worse. And I really don't know the reason why, unless they honestly think we don't care how this makes us look. If we can get out of doing this for less money, or if we can get to leave early or whatever, then we're fine. We'll take that.
I think that's it. I think the Conference USA TV deals and whatnot were not great to begin with.
No, but the TV deal that they're going to is not going to be great. So,
yeah, agreed. Now they'll be making a little bit more money, but
no, it's going to be better. That's why they're doing it. But at the end of the day, this is not. We're not squabbling over $40 million here. Okay, we're talking about chump change in the grand scheme of it. And you're the one breaking. At the end of the day, I can't get around this. You're the one breaking the contract. You are allowed to break it, but it costs this much to break it.
Yes, and in very ezy terms. Just go in and knock that out, and then you can leave.
I just don't understand why they think the rules don't apply to them. Hang on. I just said something that this is the problem. School presidents, chancellors, athletic athletic directors for the last, 30 years have been able to do whatever the hell they want. And nobody has been able to tell them what to do, when to do it, or how to do it. They do whatever the hell they want, and the answer to no. And that's the problem, is you haven't ever been held accountable for making a bad decision other than you make the wrong hire enough times, we fire you. That's it.
That's a perfect transition.
You're not told no enough until you think no one can tell you no. Brother, I think they're going to be mistaken in the court of law. Now, I'm not a legal genius. I know a lot more about the law than the average dum-dum, but, I'm still a dum-dum. So let's remember that.
Well, you had a great transition there to what will make the last topic of the day, and that is Major League Baseball. They are telling the players to sign the CBA by next Monday, and that would be February, 28th, I believe, or they are canceling games, and that doesn't mean the season. What that means is we're going to shorten the season, and you ain't going to get a paycheck. We
won't have 162 if we're not signed by Monday.
Exactly, and every one of those games that you miss, you don't get a paycheck for. So that could be interesting, right? Now, I don't know that that's going to change anything because I believe that the players, for anybody that hasn't paid attention to what's going on with the MLB, the MLBPA and Major League Baseball, the owners, they are trying to come to terms on a new collective bargaining agreement by Monday, and I don't know that it's going to happen. A spokesperson said a deadline is a deadline. Missed games are missed games. Salary will not be paid for those games. This is interesting. We talked about this quite a bit, when the pandemic started, and then last season, and now here we are getting ready for the 2022 season, and they still don't exactly have this thing figured out. And they got into a fight a couple of years ago about this, and now they're kind of going back and forth, squabbling about this one as well. Do you see any way that they get this thing sorted out by Monday?
No, zero.
I agree. I don't think they care if they miss games. I think it is much more important for them to make sure that they get a deal that is better for them than the one that they currently have. And it's not like they got a bad deal, but still.
I don't know all the nuts and bolts. I know the majority of the argument is for the last several years, salaries in the Major League Baseball have gone down. Okay, they're not going up; they're going down when everything else is going up. I don't know how much of that is the owners really took it on the chin for the COVID year, and so they're not signing as big of deals going forward to try to recoup some of that in the short term. I can't explain some of this. I haven't gotten too far in the weeds of it. I do know this. I do know the arbitration rules are absolutely ridiculous. I know that they're completely insane. Being able to own a player from a rookie year for the first 6 years and control his clock is insane. The Red Sox owner is one of the best owners in baseball. He's fighting like hell to get a deal done. He just wants to play ball. They had I couldn't tell you the name of the guy. I probably should have known this. But a fair to middling young reliever. Okay, he's going to be a star. All right, he's going to be a star relief pitcher. He's supposed to be, projected to be. Got called up and down. I don't know, 5 different times from minor leagues to the majors last year for the Red Sox bullpen. But the only reason he kept getting called up and sent back down was to save money. And at the end of the year, he made like $110,000 because he never stayed in majors long enough to qualify for whatever it was at his stint or whatnot. Like, rules like that have to go away. Like, if you're good enough to be here, we want the best, the fans, and the right thing for the sport, for the meritocracy of everything. The best players should play. That's it. That's all. And if you're intentionally not playing somebody to save money on that player or maintain control over that player, then that's not best for the sport. We need to change those rules. Also, owning a player for so long, for so little, is just really tough because it's the prime of their career. Pete Alonso has won 2 home run derbies. Now, Pete Alonso's not the greatest baseball player in the world, but Pete Alonso is a pretty good baseball player, okay, for the Mets. He's made more money in his winnings for the home run derby contest than he has in his career in the MLB. That's a problem, okay?
Agreed.
This guy's a big enough star to be on your home run derby stage. He's won it 2 years in a row, and the $1 million payout in him winning it is more money than he's made in his entire career playing with you. Like, we have to find a way to where if these guys are – I'm not saying, you got to – every rookie contract is good in every sport, but none of them are 6 years long.
Agreed.
None of them are 6 years long.
Yeah,
and that's the problem.
It's too long.
You own them for too long.
I agree with you. The deal on this says the sides remain far apart on a new agreement. The union is likely to pull expanded playoffs off the table if players are not paid a full season salary, according to sources familiar with the union's thinking. And it says that the players have never acknowledged the deadline. Opening day is supposed to be March 31st. I don't know that that's going to hit. It says the news came after 5 hours of negotiations on Wednesday that included vigorous dialogue, according to sources familiar with the talks. And, basically they're talking about salary and minimum salaries, what they're going to start at, etc. The union wants $775,000 next season. The league is offering $640,000 with $10,000 raises each year after that. I mean, there's so much, and they are so far apart on these numbers that I think it's certainly going to take longer than Monday, and this thing may go into the season. So we'll see what ends up happening, but this stuff's crazy.
Yeah, I really hate this too because I was looking forward to this baseball season. I'm an old man. I love baseball. I'm not going to stop. It was the first love of my life, and it's never going to change. And I also just had massive desires to go to Boston, which if they ever start playing games, I can still do that. I just need that's not a women a prayer thing. Like I need to plan this shit out. So I need to know what the season looks like. I need to know what the schedule looks like. So.
Yeah, because they'll have to basically redo the calendar. Like it,
yeah,
they'll have to redo the whole thing.
I don't think they're just going to lock games off the front end. Now I might be wrong. They might just do that and just say, all right, well, we're starting on this date now, and that's now new opening day, and every game before that all gets just canceled, wiped off the books.
Who knows? Who knows? All right, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Nope, that's it, brother. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'll go on and let you go, and I will wrap this thing up.
See you, bud.
All right, be good, buddy. All right, that was Chris. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Go to winningcureseverything.com. Go to BetUS.com. Go to BetUSTV.com. I hope all of you have wonderful weekends. I hope your college basketball gambling picks hit. I hope all of that good stuff. But let's close it out with our typical. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And hopefully, all of your tickets cash this weekend. Thanks for checking out Winning Cures Everything. If you want to keep up with us, hit subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Visit the website at winningcureseverything.com, or you can like us on Facebook or follow us at Winning Cures, at Gary WCE, or at Chris B. Giannini on Twitter. Share